Welcome, everyone. Wednesday Live is going to happen today. I'm sorry about the postponing last week. The wind isn't blowing today, so my electricity isn't flickering, and everything's going to work. So, I wanted to conclude the topic of composition, and I love simplicity. I love things being made easier to understand. And I was thinking, what's one thing that we could think about that would successfully give us good decision making with regards to anything in composition? That's why I chose the one ring from Lord of the Rings. If you remember how did it go? One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to draw them all, and in the darkness bind them. So what I want is one overarching idea which we can apply to any aspect of composition and even color and other things, and help us out to make a good composition. So our subject is going to be Mont Saint-Michel. This is it's a little further out. This is the one I'm going to work from. But the word that I want you to think of, the concept that I want you to embrace with regard to this is asymmetry. In other words, things are not symmetrical. In other words, another way of looking at it is more or less, or a lot of this, a little of that. You'll notice in this checkerboard here, everything is equally spaced, equally sized, two different values. But look how flat it is. It's completely flat. We don't really know where to look. Here's a Where's Waldo, if you're familiar with that thing. Everything is pretty much the same size, the same character, very similar colors. It's not asymmetrical. In fact, there is some asymmetry in this, but if we cover up the back part, you can see how that just becomes like a print fabric or something. You don't know where to look, you can't really find anything. He has, at least in this one, we have a wide area, a medium width, and a narrow width, so it does suggest a little bit of space. Here's our checkerboard again, but if you make the sizes a little bit different, the shapes a little bit different, you see you can introduce the feeling of motion or movement. So here again, the asymmetry, these all not being the same, creates more space, creates more interest. We can use it to suggest depth of space instead of being dead flat like the other one, because these are larger and they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It suggests something that's going back into the distance. Here's another thing. Initially, when you look at this, you see a tree with some birds. But if you pull up, you can see there's the shape of a gorilla and a lion in there. And the reason that we don't pick them out first, we see the tree, is because we have about as much white as we have black in this thing. So if we had a little more of the one or the other, see if I can do that, you immediately pick these things out. Another thing we can do is if we have a lot of, in this, we have a lot of blue grays or blue violets, and it gradates to a smaller amount of the red, orange, yellow colors. So we have a lot of the bluer, darker colors and a littler bit of the warmer red-orange colors. So there again, we have asymmetry, and we have a lot and a little. Interestingly, by the way, these are surfboarders who are riding the incoming tide at Mont Saint-Michel. The tide is coming in from the north and the west, and they're looking due east there in the morning. So, very fascinating place. So how are we going to address this? How do I want to address this? As is, I have some problems here. The thing is kind of centralized, and well, I mean, it's an important shape, so yeah, I do kind of want to centralize it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to create some asymmetry elsewhere. So this band, I'm going to make narrower than this band and this band. This band is colorful, that band is neutral. These are all neutral colors too, so I have more neutral colors, fewer high chroma colors. So there we go with that. Another thing I could do, boy, that's a lot of the same blue. Is there anything I can do to make that look a little more spacious? Well, I could take a clue from when we're pulled further out. You can see how this gradates from a darker blue that has a purplish bias to a lighter blue that has a greener bias. So maybe I could work a little of that in to help with the problem of the one big flat color. So I'm going to do the draw now. I'm going to find my positions, as always. A little bit more space to this side than that side. So very important horizontal, very important vertical. Just making kind of a T here. Then I'm going to say, well, it's roughly a slant like so, at about that height. Being very, very easy on myself here with the finding the shapes. Got a nice slant there. Once I've got this big shape, I can start trying to make it a little more like the actual thing. Amazing place. Bit of a roof over here, so I'm fleshing out the silhouette. Hopefully you can see. You're probably going to be able to see this a little better as we paint it. Something that I look for is where that bottom is versus where that bottom is, where this top is or versus where that top is. So then we get into these non-man-made shapes, these trees. There's a marvelous sort of turret over here. More trees, and they're basically in a... There is a very distinct sharp line there, which is, I notice, is not quite in the same place as this. So it's a little further over here, which brings this a little over here, a little over there. Top of this versus the top of that. Well, it's a bit lower, isn't it? There versus there. And this lovely staggered stair step there. There's an important shape coming out of here. And I'm not going to get too, at least for this particular image, I'm not going to get too... The big silhouette is the thing I'm looking for on this item. The power of it is in its silhouette. And not so much, at least for me, and again, that's just me, 1,000 windows, 1,000 doors. That's not what draws my eye. It's the power of that shape. This. There is a semi kind of gothic quality to parts of this that I think suits well with the Lord of the Rings. Hi, Judy. In fact, there is one of the in I think it's the second or third book of the Return of the King, or which one was it? Two Towers or something like that, by Tolkien. There is a castle called Minas Tirith, which the whole time I was in Mont Saint-Michel, I just could not help but thinking, oh my gosh, it reminds me of that. And given that it's not that far away from England, and that Tolkien did go to France during the First World War, I have to wonder if maybe he saw the place and was inspired by it in some sense. Okay, now down here, there is a very slight diagonal here. It's not dead level. And I am going to use that. I almost think I would have put that in even if it wasn't there. Then I've got another slight pitch of this beach area with a shadow that comes out from these areas here. So here's our turret. Trees, other stuff. So it's the big silhouette I'm after here. That's the key. Yeah, there are a million more buildings. There are a million more windows and walkways. And if I were to do that, if I wanted to do that, and part of me is inclined to do that at some point, I would, yeah, Judy's right, 100,000 steps. I would want to work a lot bigger so that I could get them all in, or get more of them in. Now there's some other interesting things where shadows are cast here, but I want them to be painted more than drawn. I'm going to try to make most of this thing happen in the painting stages. So, to do a quick recap, we've got the center line. Even though we've got a centralized subject, we have the center line a little bit off this way, so a lot and a little. A lot of neutral color and a little bit of strong color. This band is going to be a little narrower. I like that wedge of big stones there. And that green stripe. And I'm going to try and, hopefully you can see there's a little bit of a shadow here, which is more apparent in this image. And I'm going to try and work some of that in the, not a shadow, it's a reflection. Again, I wouldn't want a reflection dead under, well, you could have that, but this will just create a little more asymmetry if I have a wider, I have a wider shape here, narrower shape there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a narrower shape here and a wider shape there. So it's kind of a counter change of sorts. So here we go. How are we going to do this thing? Probably I'm going to want to light to dark, as we always do. I'm going to want to mix up some neutral kinds of colors for the stone and maybe modify it a little bit as I go so that it's not, again, all the same thing. Oops, we're moving here, aren't we? I have to tighten that up, huh? That's better. Okay. Yeah, I think it was... That was happening so slowly I couldn't even see it. My go-to, gonna get a mop, make a big runny puddle, put some water in there. My go-to neutral mix is the burnt sienna or red iron oxide and some ultramarine blue. And maybe a bit of yellow ochre. Maybe a bit more blue. So in a sense, we're mixing a color which is part blue, part yellow, and part red. I'm going to do it. And it's kind of uninteresting, so I'm going to swamp it a little bit more towards the yellow. Now, as I come down here, when you get that, cut off the supply line, and then work that up. I'm at a 45-degree angle here. I'm going to modify it, and I'm going to make it a little more yellowish over here. Maybe a little more yellowish still over here. Anything that's darker gets painted through. Let's put a little more blue in it to get a different character, particularly as we get down here. I'll even paint the trees. Oh, there we go, another cut off that supply line. You'll be surprised how that disappears. Okay, a little more bluishness in this vicinity. Yeah, okay, over here, more yellow. And it looks dark now, but in a very, very pale version of everything in this vicinity. It's getting a little bit more light. And we're going to walk this mess down to here, which I think I'm going to put a little more bluishness in that part. So I'm putting some turquoise here. That looks, oh geez, that looks strange now, but we will utilize it. Laura, hello. I am going to switch to now going to put some alizarin in that, turquoise and alizarin, to get a sort of off purplish gray. Maybe just get some of the original color and finish it off like so. We'll leave some of those light spots in there. We can probably utilize them. Now, as that's drying, and this, of course, is not, we're painting the lightest sections of everything now. This is not by any means, the final colors with the shadows and things like that. I may actually turn this thing upside down. To make it easier to gradate that blue. So I'm going to mop out these two. Should have left them. Could always use them again. I'm just going to go with clean. Whoa, what's that? Gunk. Clean water and cerulean blue. Maybe I'll put a little of that over there and make it runnier. So, let's see. Let's make it good and runny, John. And make this good and dark. So I've got a slower moving puddle and a runnier puddle. Hi, Jen. Hope you're not overdoing it. Trying to keep a bead here, so this is going to be the lighter shade of blue. Or the lighter shade of pale blue. There we go, we got a song going. Now I'm going to switch to the denser, darker shade of cerulean. Put a little more in. Let's get them all together. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. When you have to paint around a complicated shape, keep a bead, keep a bead. This is the best way to do it. That verdigris top on the top of the abbey there is very light, so I want to keep it okay. And now quickly upend it. Whoa. Keep it moving like that. I think it's going to do best sideways at this point. Well, I'm glad you're behaving, Jen. So let's see. I'm going to let that. We're at the holy mess stage. I'm going to try to drink up as much of the excess at the edge that I can. So this is a squeezed out brush, and I'm using it as a mop to mop up. So yeah, it might work. I even have some birds in there. I think we'll dry this. So also I'm going to check to make sure this thing is not coming down. Looks like it's okay. But we are at the holy mess stage. Okay. Now, I want to start executing some of the bigger shadow shapes and reflection shapes. So I need to look at this and figure out where am I going to go. So if I look for shadow shapes, big ones are, there's a big shadow shape in here. There's one there. There's one in there. There's one here and it connects with these trees. There's one in here. There's one there. There's one there. There's a big one all up through here. So this is going to require that I maintain a rather constant value, but change the color just a bit. So I think I'm going to go to a slightly smaller brush. Good old Oriental brush. It holds less paint. Slightly smaller, but stiffer, because we're going to be working with slower moving, denser mixes of paint. Right now, they're kind of light. Very, very light. Let's erase. Okay. I want to put a very, very pale tint of turquoise up here on the verdigris section. There too. I guess it's copper, maybe, or brass. And then I'm going to put some burnt sienna into that blue, a little more blue for a neutral that is leaning towards brown, kind of. The other thing I like about the Oriental brush is it's got quite the point. Now that's a stopping point because I can merge into the trees there. Let's put a little bit more brown in one end of this and come down And I'm going to touch in there, and because I'm touching that runny stuff in there, it's going to push some of the paint that I've already put down there out of the way, and it's going to create a variation, so some asymmetry again. A lot and a little. Oh dear, well I should have left that light. Okay, so what happens if you accidentally paint something dark that should be light? You quickly rinse, squeeze, and evacuate. Well, we could also use that in here to create some of these very gothic looking spires. Goodness me. This thing creates a shadow over here that gets a little bluer as it goes down. So I'm going to get some more ultramarine. I'm looking at this area here. And that goes over and connects up with a tree or something. It's too wet to get that one just yet. Over on this side, that shadow does appear to be a little bluer. And eventually joins up down here with some of these trees. So there is on this side of, oh, there's a abbey window that has something of an interesting arch. There's something there. I'm just looking for shapes. We have to quit thinking of things as what they are. Although I'm stuck with having to tell you what it is I'm painting, I'm really not thinking of them that way. I'm thinking of them just as shapes. Still too damp. But there is a thing in here, thing in here. So a little bit of variegation in there. Some brown, some blue, some bright. Constant value, that has to stay the same, more or less, but I'm creating asymmetry in the hue that I'm working with. Now, I'm going to right now make a kind of greenish color using yellow ochre and Prussian blue. And I'm going to tie these shadows tie in with some you'd go up there and there were just trees planted everywhere. I don't know what in the world they're growing in. But it was pretty neat. Now I'm going to put a little bit more yellow ochre in that mix, where I think it's going to get a bit more light. And a little bit more Prussian blue, where it seems to be more in shade. So it's the same consistency of paint, same value, but we're changing the hue a bit. More of the yellow over here, possibly. More of the blue. I'm going to rinse that, blot it, and I'm just going to get right into that Prussian blue and stick it right at the end. and in a few key places. Now, I'm going to work that mix of greens over here too. We have more of the yellow ochre. Becky, hello. Here's some asymmetry in the sense that we've had these very man-made architectural type shapes, and now we're introducing some of these lovely natural tree type shapes. So blotting that and then dipping into the blue, the straight into the damp Prussian blue, create a sense of light and shadow on those shapes there. Oh yeah, okay. Now, back to the mix of blues and browns. Maybe a little alizarin in them. I'm looking into this vicinity here. There are some darker areas in this that will be added later. I'm going to sneak that shape over here. There are some, dare I do it? There. There. I think we're dry enough up here that I can fool around with that. The right side of the spire has a bit of shadow on it. I can also smuggle some darker notes in here to help suggest more gothicness going on there. Takes a steadier hand than I have right now. Okay. I'm going to start doing these shadows in here. I'm seeing some little ones here and there. Sometimes if you see something that's that color but a little lighter, just pause, put some water in it, and pull it over. For example, this. These areas here are kind of a lighter, duller blue. And I'm going to let that dry because I need to go slightly darker down here too. So, well, let's so we can help see that big shape. I'm going to do a medium bluish shape. And then we will rescue that and make parts of it darker later. Now down here, I'm getting into where those trees are going to go. So let's go back and get some of that greenish mix while this is wet. Yellow ochre, Prussian blue, and coming right up under this and into that, it's going to create a very soft edge because the paint I'm putting in there is only a little bit thicker than the paint that paint there. Now this part, I'm going to get into some rich ultramarine and Prussian, right out of the pocket. And I'm going to try to start getting some of these darks that I see in here. See in here, not see and here. I was that kinesthetic. Boy. I'm really going to get dark and maybe even throw in a little bit more alizarin to make it more purplish dark. Comes that shadow, the other shadow. A little bit of light and shade, a little bit of light and shade. Let's actually get in there with some red. Not really. Whoa, that's too red. Let's get some blue. Okay. While that is just doing its thing, okay. So here's the bit I was telling you, there's going to be some darker areas in here. That we need to make the tower look a bit more rounded. So over here I'm going to try to get some clean yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a wee bit of that bluish mix. And starting with water over here where it's lighter. Blotting, getting this color and putting it over here so that it turns that corner, I hope. Well, I didn't get it close enough, did I? So I got to moisten that edge. There we go. Okay. I need a bluish, purplish, brownish I need to come into here, into there, to there. This wall is very dark because it's, as is this one. It's oblique to the light. Is that the right word? Now that same kind of mix, perhaps a little browner. That's too brown. Let's get some more blue. More blue. Something we can't really see is casting a shadow over here. I think it might be another one of those turrets. Let's get some of the other darker detail in there. Windows, windows, windows. Now, okay, over in here, we need a bit more work. I think I should start working down here at the bottom. I'm getting too much done up here and not enough down there. So I could, while this is still somewhat damp, just some of that weathering there. There is some weathery type, I guess from where the water comes up to when the tide is in. I'm going to soften the edge at the top by taking a damp, blotted out brush and touching it there. And maybe just even using a bit of that. Suggest that outcropping in that area there. Oh, that's a good color. I think I'm going to use some of that over here too. And in there. And I do need to get a dark greenish business in here. Some of those extra dark shapes that occur there. Doesn't look organic enough. Okay, I think that's all right. I want a odd turquoise green, so yellow ochre and turquoise for this bit of weird water there. I'm going to soften that edge. Ooh, let's see, wait a minute. I'm going to make lighter spots by mopping out some of that wet paint. Then I'm going to go back to the bigger brush, big area, big brush, and I'm going to get some alizarin and put it in this greenish mix. Maybe get some turquoise. I need a silvery gray. It's runny. Coming up right, a little redder. Oh, that lavender. Let's get in there with the lavender. That'll be the stuff. It always gives me a silvery gray. Beet is waiting for us. Leave a wee bit of the lighter color showing through here and there. And now, while that's setting up, I'm going to mop a lighter section in here for this sort of reflection there. And then I'm going to start making a darker version of this thing. No, not that brown. Maybe more blue. Nondescript blue. We're going to get some rocks in there at some point, don't worry. A lighter, more turquoise version of that over here. Now I'm going to try to play with that. A dark murky green. Reflecting from here. If it's too make some dark over here, light over there. Mopping. Mop through here. Mop through there. Mop through there. I think I need some of the darker color in the lighter area. a lot of lights, a lot of the light area with a few darks, a lot of the dark area with a few lights. Asymmetry. Maybe we'll even splatter. See what happens there. There's a weird bluishness on that part of the sand. It's a very pale blue to suggest that. And then I'm going to try to do these rocks. A little bit of everything we've used. Dance the tip. So here's another kind of asymmetry. I've been using one kind of stroke mostly everywhere. I've used washes, that's one kind of thing. I've used these strokes like this, that's another kind of thing. But now I want to have a kind of weird organic stroke. I haven't had this kind of stroke over here yet. A lot of those, a little of these. Asymmetry. Darker version of it. Within the area, I'm going to put in some stronger darks. Well, let's let that dry on its own. And I want to do some more up in here. There are some windows in here which are quite dark. And you know what? I don't think these are windows. This looks like it's a stain. It looks like maybe where they are at one point we're emptying the night soil. So I dampen that and I feed into it. Some paint. Some of that dark, stiffer mix of blues and browns. That needs to be a reddish brown. There was a kind of a terracotta roof over there. Maybe not that much. Well, let's have another one. It's too much. Evacuate some of it. Again, some of the strong darks. Where they appear that needs some attention. Perhaps just a little bit more turquoise on the one side. That's a little better, I think. This, I'm going to dry this because I want to do some glazing, and then that'll be the kind of the end of it. Okay, now I want to do a sort of a bluish, grayish glaze. Oh, it's maybe too dark. Rinse, squeeze, lighten. And then I'll have to suggest a little bit of their reflection in there. I do need to have a little more going on over here. Oh, that area could be a little bit darker, browner, grayer. So I'm glazing the whole thing. Likewise up here. Because this part is not getting quite as much light as that part. Where else can we do things like that? Well, there needs to be a slightly bluer side to that. This could be darker. Ultramarine, a little bit of that brown, mostly ultramarine. That makes me breathe a little easier. There are two. There are two. In here too. Certain areas. Okay. And that's probably where I want to, ooh, let's see. There is a small amount of trees showing up over here. Like that. This needs to be not as light as the sand. This could stand to be a little darker there. Let's detape. Well, thank you, Diane. I'll tell you, this place, to me, it's just a gorgeous subject. And I have been painting the daylights out of it because I'm just obsessed with it. And I'm going to have a show of all pictures from Mont Saint-Michel, at Art Domestique in Washington, followed by a workshop. And the show will open May 1st. So if you want to see all kinds of views of Mont Saint-Michel, in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of, from all kinds of angles, it was just wonderful. We walked all around the place when the tide was low, and it was what an experience. So, yeah, there's a few things I think could be done to it to sex it up, but on the whole, the thing that I wanted to get across today was this idea of compositionally of asymmetry, a lot and a little, not equal amounts of the same thing. So if you think about color, don't have equal amounts of cool and warm colors. Have more of one than the other. Light and dark, don't have equal amounts of that. Have more dark than light or more light than dark. Position, don't have more space on one, have a little bit more space on one side than the other, top and bottom. When you're dealing with textures, have smooth textures and very elaborate textures. Man-made shapes, organic shapes, but not equal amounts. If you cannot do that for some reason, find another place to create asymmetry. If you need to centralize a subject, make the amount of space above it and below it and the color above and below it asymmetrical. You know, like a portrait, you wouldn't stick the person off to the side. You have to pretty much put them in the center. So you do something with maybe more darks and have the light on their flesh, or have more, have maybe color that complements what they're wearing in the background. Just create asymmetry wherever you can. Position, size. Don't have things that are all the same size. Have large shapes and small shapes. Gosh, no matter what you're dealing with at any moment in a painting, if you stop and say, is it too much? Is it and its opposite too equally dispersed or displayed? If you got a lot of linear marks, try to have some non-linear marks. If you've got a lot of hard edges, try to have some soft edges, but more of one than the other. I'm just thinking, if you just, I love to call it the one ring to rule them all, or the one idea to tie them all together. Asymmetry, I always think about that. Another little thing that I always tell myself when I'm painting, it's almost like a little mantra kind of thing. I say, anything that's the same stays in the same plane. That's why these are all the same, so they stay in the same plane. But these, because they're not the same, don't stay in the same plane, and they seem to create space. So hopefully I got that point across. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this series on composition. As we go forward the next 6 weeks, Wednesday Live may migrate to another day because I'm going to be in Dubuque on Tuesdays teaching a workshop there each Tuesday. So I will let you know what's going on and what the subjects will be. And if you want to see some more Mont Saint-Michel, Art Domestique, May 1st. So see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay sane, and peace out.